I think it's interesting that he's in Wisconsin in the first place. I mean, most contenders or putative contenders tend to limit themselves to the early voting states, which in the case of Republicans are Iowa, New Hampshire and South Carolina. So it's interesting that he's going to Wisconsin. Wisconsin has traditionally been a pivotal state in recent presidential elections, clearly trying to boost his own popularity there, even though he hasn't, of course, officially declared, as Evan mentioned in her report. He has been running effectively a quasi-campaign or a shadow campaign for weeks, if not months now, Natasha, and recently has been slipping backwards in polls against former President Trump. So it's nearing a bit of a moment of truth, even at this early stage, for Governor DeSantis.
Yeah, that is interesting. Can you talk about how Governor DeSantis rounded out the week? Because some calling this a monumental, a stretch of lawmaking. Are we seeing him clearly prepare for a 2024 campaign launch?
To my mind, we are, because I think some of the things that you're alluding to show his desire to really insert himself into some of the most divisive and incendiary debates in American life. So, for example, he signed a 6-week abortion ban. He has been very emphatic on the whole issue of the teaching of sexual identity or gender identity in schools, expanding restrictions on that from 3rd grade to across the schooling system. Those topics alone, as well as the battle with Disney, really make this case that he is the anti-woke candidate. That is a drum that he himself has beaten explicitly a number of times. So the real reasoning there, I think, is positioning for a presidential run.
Yeah, let's talk about that anti-wokeism that you're speaking about. Even if that is helpful for him potentially with the GOP nomination, will that ultimately be hurtful if he does make it against President Biden on the bigger campaign stage?
It could be, particularly in some of its constituent parts. I'm thinking there particularly of the 6-week abortion ban. Obviously, abortion's a very emotive issue. Clearly, people have very, very strongly held views about it. But as a matter of politics, a 6-week abortion ban isn't popular. It's just as simple as that. And we can look at poll after poll that demonstrates that. So I think that his backing of that proposal could definitely cause him problems in a general election. That's not the case for all of the issues that come under that anti-woke banner. In fact, there was a poll just within the past couple of days showing that the electorate broadly sympathises with the Republican view of trans issues, essentially, and the electorate generally hews to a more conservative position on that topic. So we do have to look at the constituent parts of this anti-woke message. Some parts of it are damaging, others less so.
Niall, I do want to ask one more quick question. President Biden talking about his age, speaking about Kamala Harris, his son, in a wide-ranging interview last night. What are you tracking out of this?
I think the response on his age is the most interesting thing, because the issue of his age is the biggest issue and biggest challenge that he faces. He's clearly trying to turn it into a positive, saying that it means he knows more than a lot of people. He may have some success with that argument. I would point out that our society does not generally operate along those lines. You don't generally have 82-year-old CEOs or 82-year-old people in very pivotal positions. There are some exceptions, of course, but it's a difficult enough argument to make, I think.
Okay. Niall Stanage, always appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.